Hello, hello everyone. I hope you have had a fun day at MachineCon. This is one of my favorite conferences. Lots to learn from leaders like you. Today we have a great panel discussion. The topic is essentially how to cultivate a data-first culture, right? Uh, since the advent of data science, we have come a long way. I think initially organizations established data science teams that were more centralized, but as we go ahead and realize that the need for data is becoming ever so crucial for decision making, there are more and more decentralized teams that are established. Data science is percolating into individual functions, and you know we have observed that around 42% of organizations overall have decentralized teams now, and this number goes even up as we as the with the size of the organization. Uh, with that, there's also the question of how to ensure that everyone is on board around the data first train, right? So we are going to try and understand some of the steps which can enable organizations to be data first. But before we do that, I want to kind of establish what is a data first culture, right? How did the how did the recognition of a data's potential impact on decision making lead to the prioritization in various industries? Anand, if you would like to take this one up.
Yeah, good evening all. I think before getting into the question, Kashyap, so we need to take some data-driven call. So the next one is the big session. Okay, the celebrity is coming. So this session we need to get the the audience attention. We'll get that. So data-driven organization, which are what kind of organizations are data-driven organization? Any organization which collects, analyze, and interpret data to take decisions is called the data-driven organization, right? Though it looks simple, but in a practically, if you look at many of the organizations are not doing. So if they follow this structure, collect, analyze, and interpret, that is a data-driven culture. And it is not only just for analytical purposes. Data-driven aspects need to be there in the starting from your product strategy and then marketing, customer support, everywhere. So if it is driven by the data, that organization, we can proudly say that it is a data-driven organization. Yeah, that's my view.
Perfect. Parikshit, what's your opinion on this one?
Check. That's on, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So when it comes to a data-driven organization, like agree with Anand 100% saying that any organization that's actually leveraging data to take decisions or even shape their larger strategy is an organization who's actually leveraging data for decision making, right? And this is slightly different when it comes to a digitally native versus a non-digitally native organization, if I may put it that way to say. Like for a digitally native organization, because most of the data is being collected, there is a lot of PI data involved as well. The data security and the data privacy angle also comes into play, saying that like when you are collecting data, like how are you going to store it, how are you going to use it, data becomes all the more crucial. And because there are so many audits which come into play as well, if you're a financial institution, or if you even if you're actually collecting any sort of PI data, like outside India you have the GDPR, etc., right? So it's already regulated in India, the PDP bill will come in. So the data security angle also comes into play when you're actually trying to leverage data and capture data to take decision making. So apart from the three parts which Anand already mentioned about collecting, analyzing, and storing data, you also need to keep a tab on what kind of privacy angles are you actually covering on that front when you actually become digitally native and use data for decision making, and what kind of decisions you're actually taking based on the data which you're collecting.
Okay. Now that we have kind of defined what a data first culture is, right? it might be simple to say, but imbibing it or in real practice, it might be difficult. Many employees don't come from data background, if especially working in consumer organizations, etc. At the same time, the data landscape is changing very fast. Every year we have a new buzzword. This year it's generative AI, but next year we'll have another one. Uh, in this, when even data scientists find it difficult to keep up with some of the ever evolving changes, how do you enable a data first culture in that case? If Harshini, if you can.
Yeah. So speaking about data landscape, if you have to go 20 years back, we were traditionally looking at data in the form of rows and columns, right? And any company for that matter, let's say the likes of Walmart or Target, with every purchase or with every inventory, there was data that was collected. But what happened in the recent times was that we could not look at just the shift in data landscape in silos, because what was driving it was also the computation landscape, right? Because computation became faster and cheaper, we got more creative and more ambitious with what is the data that we are collecting. For example, earlier we never thought that we would be using something like a genome sequence or an amino acid sequence as a data for further analysis, or let's say for protein folding prediction. But now when computation enabled us to do that, we got more creative, and that's where I think the entire landscape of unstructured data and the dark data came into existence, and that is helping business tap into data in a larger and more impactful way.
Fantastic. Amit, your thoughts on this?
Okay, so let me keep this way. So, first, the landscape is changing, as you said. And right now, when you see, there are shift or there are focus towards data quality, diversity, and data governance. And that is because you are seeing scrutiny, regulatory scrutiny around uh, I would say the data, that's important, and then how data is being used in the system. That is something really important now. This is one thing. The next part is that, and it actually enabling the business insights, because you need quality data, right? And after pandemic, so pandemic also has enabled the digital transformation. And when I say digital transformation, I'm talking about leading real time predictive analytics that is providing you agile based decision, that is basically supporting you with agile based decision. This is important. You also see advancement in AI and machine learning, and that is accessible to people. Like you are democratizing AI, it's accessible to business, and they are using that as a tool to integrate to their business insights, right? That's important. Uh, and much talk around responsible AI and ethical AI, with a focus on transparency and fairness in data uses. Correct. So we are seeing a new era evolving for trust-centered, data-driven decision-making process, right? Uh, just to put this in an example, you know, I was leading a project, and it is more into manufacturing side and into the factory. So in factory, we want our workers to be safe in front of heavy machines. And at the same time, we want that worker should follow all the procedures so that the product quality gets superior, or we get superior product quality. So how does we are making this? We are using advancement in video analytics like AI-based technology. We are using digital twins, okay? And at the same time, we are using edge computing because of the security, the latency, and those kind of stuffs, and also the data streaming part. So all these have been evolved. All these have evolved, and putting all these together, we see a real solution, and that is for Industry 4.0, smart factory, right? The simplest example is smartwatch, right? It's collecting data for you, and how this is providing insight, you can see it, right? So this is how I'm seeing this changing. Probably, if you see 5 years from now, probably this will even go more into the augmented side of it. So I think this is evolving, in a very rapid way. And if I see the past, like, let's say last 5 years, and then this particular use case that I have talked about, probably it was not possible at that time. Having digital twin, AI, edge computing, and then data streaming all together, and then create a real solution. Right. So this is what I want to add.
Okay.
Point, yeah.
Anand, one of the things that you said struck me, right? Bringing a data first culture is not just about analytics, right? That means there is a need for fundamental change. What is that fundamental change that we're talking? Can you elaborate on that?
I think for a companies to become a data driven, there are certain steps you need to take. Maybe we can look at the different angles. We can see people, process, and technology side of it. And we're talking about like companies nowadays. Earlier we had CEOs and CTOs. Different nowadays CDO is in a normal, because first time when we heard CDO, it was looking as a new role. But now CDOs, morning we have seen many CDOs have presented their talk and then they received award and all. The CDO role, because Chief Digital Officer, that gives a ability for the team and for the organization to focus their efforts on the data side of it, so that they can set a vision. At the same time, the CDO also need to be equivalently, the powerful. At the same time, the given opportunities, and they should have the liberty to get things done. If they have that leadership level, things are set, and then they have set set the vision for the company, saying that no. And again, there are two things you can understand about the company, saying that no, organization ability to get value out of data. There is one segment of it. Second, the data can give value to the organization, because there is a natural business. We try to get the data, from that we get the insights and then try to maximize our efforts. Second thing is, when we do the operations, we get the as a secondary output, we get the data. That data can be used for another segment of people. That data monetization also can happen. So even you can look at that, saying that no, what kind of company you are. And then as Parikshit said, it would be easy for a digital native company, because at the beginning itself they would have defined the saying that no, where I'm, what are all my touch points, how I am collecting the data, how I am storing every technological, maybe that also it undergoes the incremental updates, but that has been set. But for an enterprise company, you never had it. Earlier it would have been a person to person meeting. You would look at many industries, like their heavy manufacturing side of it, or heavy personal involvement, where it is now you go and meet the banker, or you meet the consultant, and then that there introducing the data into this in the workflow will be difficult. And then it will be, again, you will introduce in a very light manner, and then it goes to the very high end technical and all. So you need to transition that, so that people side and technology, and then make the data accessible for all. First
Democratization.
of all, the data democratization, we call it as, and then data literacy. It is not only for the data science team. Okay, what I am setting up, a data science team, all know they undergone training and everything. Each and every department people, I think we need to do a kind of a cross team workshops and then team discussions and all, so that they know that power of data. Saying that okay, it's not only the data science is going to be useful, even with the data, if it is made available to me, even for the basic things, I can check it, and the power of, so make it accessible, and then make the people data literate. And then when we do both the things, there isn't a downfall of it. Like, so then data will be accessible for everybody. That people can take data. Then there is a risk is like, that we need a data governance, because who can access, what is that, like how long we are going to keep that, what is that kind of access we can give it to different departments. So data governance and security, this becomes data accessibility, data literacy, and governance. These three things we need to do, and the people side of it give the enough empowerment for the leadership.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. This is a very top-down approach look at it, right? Harshini, if we have to consider, so while data science is a relatively newer concept, the current graduates that are coming in, for them, data science is probably something that they're growing up with, right? In that sense, how, it's not like completely new. So while Anand talked about a little bit about the top-down approach, what are some of the fundamentals that you need to establish that enable a bottom-up, not a bottom-up approach per se, but kind of enable the younger folks coming into the company who are not from technical backgrounds to, start considering or having a data-first approach?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, or probably I would slightly think of it in a different way, because, like you rightly mentioned, for anyone who's joining an organization new, everybody knows about data science today. Everybody's talking about it. So there is always this interest of wanting to test and try out data more and more. But where more training or know-hows would have to be provided is to tell that you have to look at the business requirement at the end of the day. And very often than not, it is not about putting the most complex model that the young data scientists would be looking at in order to learn. How can I learn model A today and model B tomorrow? It is not that which is going to solve the business problem at the end of the day. It might be something as simple as a SQL query also, which will give you the right insight that the business team is looking for. So I think that connecting, correlation is not causation, or looking at the data in a more business hypothesis driven way is something that we would have to help the younger data scientists understand, so they know that it needs to come from, what is the problem that I'm trying to solve and why is it important for a business. For example, today, if there is someone in my team and I ask them, what is that the customer is looking to solve, their immediate response would be, okay, they have 100,000 documents which they are looking to parse and then run a doc AI solution. That is a solution. Now, what is the problem? Maybe there is a team of 300 members who are sitting and reviewing this today. There is time latency. Customer is not getting the response at the right time, which leads to lower customer satisfaction. So understanding the business problem becomes more important than giving them more data literacy.
Okay. Now that we have established what is data first and what are some of the fundamentals for it, in reality, how does this translate to actually implementing this, right? So I want to ask Parikshit, what is that first step that organizations need to start with when they have decided that we want to imbibe a data first culture?
Okay, so in my opinion, the first step always starts with the top management, saying that the CEO or the chairman or the CXOs need to have their own buy-in, saying that yes, we want to adopt a data first culture, we are on board, we see the value that data is going to bring. It's not going to be immediate or short term.
No, so my question is from the buy-in is there now.
Okay.
Like the buy-in is there. We have established that this thing, like CD, the first step is probably CDO. As a leadership, what is the first step do you
Okay.
take? That kind of a thing.
So first, again, so for all the steps of evolution, which we also see in data science today, in AI today, it's based on need. It's a need-based thing which comes up, right? And the supply which comes in the form of talent, research, tech is something which is augmenting it. So when you talk about just setting up the first step I feel is to first build the descriptive layer first, apart from setting the team up, right? So first you need to establish within the business as to why do you actually need data reporting, where do you actually stand, like how are you faring against your competitors. Suppose like I'm a brand manager and I say that yes, I've achieved a 15% growth for my brand over the year, I've done a fantastic job, but did the category grow at 20%? Did the growth come from a very polarized region maybe, or did it only come from one state and like all the other states were showing kind of a stagnant kind of a growth, right? That comes from data and reporting. So you understand first where your problem areas are, saying that yes, the Western markets did not do well, probably, right? So that's the first step, to identify where the gap is using data, and that's the descriptive step. So once the business buys into this, then automatically the question would come to their mind, saying that what do we do to prevent it? How can we do how do we predict when the next what is the next best action that we should pick up, right? So that's when the predictive work stream comes into play, saying that like can we like start forecasting sales for that particular region. Like let's start using levers. Let's see if price is more sensitive. Let's use a triple M model and see if like maybe that region is more price sensitive. Do you want to sell small packs or large packs in that particular region? What kind of product assortment do you want to have? That becomes the predictive step, saying right now I know that if you do XYZ, predictive plus prescriptive is what I combined here, saying that if I do XYZ, I'll see a sale of like a sale of X million dollars coming from that step, saying that if I don't take step A or B, I'll probably see Y million dollars coming out of it. And this is the incremental delta which I'll get out of this, and that's going to be your ROI. So that becomes a business buy-in, saying that if you take this decision, you're asking a company to spend millions, right, or crores in maybe marketing or in expanding distribution, etc. There needs to be a validation saying that how much long-term ROI are you getting out of it. That's the only way to actually justify whether you should actually implement it or not.
Identification and realization.
Yes. So realization then, and that's a need-based thing, saying that you need now the business is only coming back to you and asking, saying that this is it. Then once these models have landed, you know from a business perspective, some of them would work, some of them would not work. Then you go back and fine tune it and then keep pushing it further. And same from the technical side, you know that X algorithm works, saying that yes, we've built this model, great, it's working. The POC was great, and that's how every experiment starts, right? To build confidence, you would want to do a POC first in a small region, and then most often we see in cases that it does not scale because it wasn't designed that way. That's when even in industry we've seen that, right? Most of the data science experiments which started off as experiments, and most of it faded off. There were multiple reports which also said that all these, like 70-80% of the experiments which we do not make it into production, right? That's when the focus on production started coming in, and that's where the focus on data engineering, which came in the recent years, like did come up because we were struggling to put models back into production, right? So then the need for data and data engineering came in. Then, like when you start leveraging deep learning models, how many GPUs do you need? Do you need a cloud-based solution? Do you need a on-prem solution? That kind of choices started coming in. Now, with the advent of generative AI, we know that it's very powerful, but very few companies probably have been able to leverage it or generate proper value out of it. So in due course, when business value comes in, you'll start seeing generative AI also moving into production.
Correct.
But that's also going to be a journey. And similarly, there will be new advents as well, which is going to be new, which is going to be need based, saying that what next. And that's how even like for an organization, you start building confidence at every step and then keep pushing it forward
And
while generalizing ROI.
fantastic. Amit, your thoughts on it? What is the first
Yeah,
step?
I will keep it very simple and short. So first of all, you need to create a data strategy aligned with your business goals, overall business goals, and there should be clear matrices defined for sure. When we start a data science team, we blindly go and hire people like data scientists. You do not have to hire data scientists at start because you talked about the practical approach, right? We have to pick data engineer first, and they are going to create environment for you, like data environment, infrastructure, and everything around that. And then comes data scientist if it is required at all. Okay. What I also feel that we do create POCs, and sorry to say that, but many companies are POC creator companies. They do not get to production. The reason being they do not align their thoughts with business, and they just want to show their capability. And at the end of the day, they only show their capability, but they do not convert that into business, or that does not translate into the business. I think that needs to be sorted out. Another aspect is data science team and business needs to talk. They need to be in sync regularly. I think this is missing. You also talked about practical aspect, right? So the data accessibility part is really important. The data availability is not a challenge, right? Data is available, but how to access that? I have seen many of the projects that got delayed or maybe you lost. I do not want to take any name, but many lose the project, lost the project because of data accessibility part. And it also delays your project, as I said. I think these are important parts, but I think last I want to add, this is a trade-off time, and then technology is evolving. So you should have agile mindset to take decision. I think that's very important, and you cannot ignore that. So from the practical
Okay.
aspect.
Harshini, you help companies kind of, establish data practices, you enable digitization and improve their overall data-driven capabilities. Uh, what sort of initiatives, apart from, giving solutions or building solutions for them, I'm sure there is some kind of consultancy on a level that kind of advises on some initiatives to be taken or frameworks to be established. Have you seen any framework which has worked, any state-of-the-art framework that has been clearly been successful to imbibe this data-first culture in companies?
Yeah, so when it comes to helping organizations establish their data science institution or the center of excellence, we primarily look at it again as people, process, and platform. When we and why this becomes important is if there is a centralized team that is able to address these requirements for an organization, there is of course going to be 100 different requirements that's coming from business units across, right? So now it is the onus of the COE team to know what is the right framework I need to apply in order to address the right requirements. For example, there'll be something coming in from the supply chain team, there'll be something coming in from the inventory management team. The COE team needs to be able to connect the dots and say this is how point A can also help point B. Right? So that is one part. And the second one is, given how fast the space is operating, given how fast business decisions are to be taken, we spoke about data accessibility. I would like to add two more things in addition to that. Yeah. In addition to accessibility would be reliability and timeliness of data. Because if an executive is asking you a question, you cannot get back with that answer 2 months. Once you start doing that, your data or the insight from your data becomes an afterthought. It only becomes like a supporter of the decision that you've already taken. So timeliness of data becomes another important aspect, and being able to process this information. So that is where platforms or accelerators become important. That is another thing that we help organizations develop. And the third one primarily is around training, and not just on the data science technical side of things, but largely on how do you identify the right use case? How do you know who's the right stakeholder or who's the end user who's going to use this, and how is it going to impact their day-to-day activity? So the entire discovery framework of identifying what is the current state, the future state, and the intermediate milestones along the way. So these are some of the things that we focus on.
Yeah, interesting. I would like to know your perspective as well, because your journey has been a little bit different. You have gone from a startup which was acquired into a bigger organization. Uh, what are your thoughts on it? How did you kind of start working out? What are some of the frameworks that you established within your newer organization to kind of enable this?
So the frameworks, there aren't any frameworks as such, but there is a hub and spoke model which is there, which was which was here, which was also there in Unilever, saying that there is a center for all the specialized teams. There is a centralized COE kind of a framework which sits. And like you mentioned, this team is then decentralized into the various different business units which are operating, right? And one reason for having this is to say that let the data scientists operate very closely with the business, while also ensuring that they have an umbrella where they are not pressurized into getting into some, or pressurized into making, or into building something into the model which is not the ideal outcome. Saying that because they're a part of a separate team altogether, while working as a consultant or a specialist with that particular pod, like they don't feel that kind of a pressure. And I feel that if they were reporting into that particular pod per se, then there would be that added pressure to say that let's try to get the numbers to this particular level. Why are you saying that we'll only achieve 5% growth? Why can't we like aim for a 10%? What's wrong in that? So that kind of pressure, which becomes an undue thing which comes on individuals, is something which is avoided if you have a hub and spoke model where a centralized team is decentralized into various different departments. And that's how we operate at PhonePe. That's how we were operating at Unilever as well. While at Unilever it was at a larger scale because there was a global COE, then there were regional markets which were there, and that was also further segregated into various different departments.
Fantastic. And final thoughts, right? Amit, going forward, what are some of the trends and technologies that you see will play an important role for organizations to establish this data first culture? What are some of the innovative ways, apart from technology, because it's not just analytics, that they will come up with? What are your thoughts on this?
I think I will just pick words from all of these. We talked about edge computing. We are talking about privacy. So privacy first AI technologies like, okay, I do not want to use jargons, but technologies like federated learning, where you have decentralized models or decentralized data and you train the model. Um, you also have decentralized way of working like blockchain, and then Web 3.0, right? So user will have control of their own data. So that's a way forward. I think quantum is like right now far away, but there is a solution in between that basically try to fill the gap between traditional computer and quantum computer, that is a digital annealer that tries to solve combinatorial optimization problem. I think that's really powerful and fast. And you can just name technology like AI is, I think we cannot forget AI. So let me just say like this, we used to call like every company will be a software company. I think down the line, 5 to 6 years or 7 years, you will see every company will be AI company or AI enabled company. This is what you are going to see.
Fantastic. Anand, closing thoughts?
Technological trends.
Yeah.
Uh, I think we have seen how the data is traveling, right? Like, initially we started with the data warehousing. So collect all the data, do the ETL jobs, and then give it to the business intelligence and the data science team. And then we have gone to the next stage where we kept the data lake first. And then from there, we kept data warehousing for all BI stuff. And then machine learning and deep learning, unstructured data, deep learning directly take data from the data lake, something from the data warehousing. And now the concept is, I think, the next level we are going where everything is like one data lake. From there, they call it as a new different names like, data lake house. so many things where everything is accessed from a single source of things. And the structure of the data also changed. Morning we have seen Rakesh has given the session where single store. We are talking about SQL, NoSQL, MongoDB, and so many other different sort of databases. Now, when this LLM has come, where everybody we wanted to store the huge, whatever the enterprise data, we wanted to store it in a vector format. So the structure, totally we are talking, morning we are talking about a vector database. In vector database also there are multiple competitors, and there is a novelty coming out, and that's what a single store they have talked about, what they can do. So the data landscape is changing, the framework is changing, the technology is changing, and I think depending upon the kind of breakthrough what is happening, currently it is an LLM and then vectors. So that way, I think it's keep changing it, and these are all the things going to come in the now.
Fantastic. We can take questions now. Any questions from the audience?
Before questions, Kashyap, with your permission, I think we should ask from the audience here, because we are hearing reports from McKinsey and Gartner saying that, no, I have read the report where it is a data driven, we collect the individual reports from various global organizations. Here all the leaders are sitting in. How many of you feel like your organization is truly data driven? Please raise your hand. We will not tell your name to your company, don't worry. How many of you feel your company is truly data driven? Very less hand. How many of you feel like 50% at least yours is data driven? More hands are rising. And then the people who raise the hand, anybody from the enterprise segment or the newly digital native companies? Anyone from digital native companies? Yes, sir.